It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the cogX Global Leadership Summit today. We are very lucky to have with us amazing speakers who will be shared about a topic that we all want to know. What are the new jobs of tomorrow in finance and fintech? I'm Chema Nguyen, and I'm the co-founder of CFT, the Center for Finance, Technology and Entrepreneurship. We are based in London, and we are one of the fastest growing learning platforms in fintech and digital finance with a mission, the mission to upskill finance professionals, but not only tech people, VC, lawyers, entrepreneurs, teachers in this rapidly changing industry transformed by emerging technologies. So jobs of tomorrow's in finance and fintech. To give you a bit of background and set the scene, we all know, technology is advancing at a phenomenal pace, and many of today's jobs within the financial industry and fintech especially did not exist even 5 years ago. So today we look to the future and ask ourselves, how do you prepare for jobs that don't exist yet? How can we prepare people? How do the skill set that will be needed by fast-growing companies 2025, 2030, and beyond? We are joined today with senior leaders, co-founders, CEOs about their views, how to support those keen to upskill and expose themselves to the new world of finance and fintech. It's about thinking of the impact, to think at ways we upskill, build our workforce of tomorrow. We'll be engaging to share interesting insight, their experience as thought leaders and pioneers. It's a great pleasure to meet you all. It's a great pleasure to have you part of this discussion. I would like to welcome Eva Wong. I would like to welcome Gabby Dizon and Tara Reeves, Sophie Guibault. Thanks a lot for joining us today. We'll invite you to start by introducing yourself. And my first question to you would be, what's your role and what your company does and your career to get to your current role? And perhaps I'll ask Eva to start. Welcome, Eva. And then I will get then Gabby and then Tara and Sophie. But thanks, Eva, and welcome to the session.
Thank you very much. Great to be here and great to meet all of you as well. My name is Eva Wong. I'm one of the co-founders and chief operating officer at Borrowell. I'm based here in Toronto, and Borrowell's mission is to help make financial stability possible for everyone. We're one of the largest consumer fintech companies in Canada with close to 2 million members. We were the first company to provide credit scores for free in Canada. Prior to that, you had to pay to get that from a credit bureau. We've recently required Refresh Financial, which offers a credit building loan and secured credit card. And so we're excited about continuing on achieving our mission. And I like to say that my background really was not anything to do with financial services, technology, or startups. I graduated with a business degree, undergraduate, worked as a management consultant, moved overseas and worked in international development for a small bit, returned to do a graduate degree in international development and economics. And then I came back to Toronto, worked in consumer packaged goods, went overseas again in more of like a consulting capacity, and then came back to Toronto and worked for my church, so in the not-for-profit sector. So I have like quite a varied background, which I don't think is necessarily typical for a fintech founder.
Yes, no. Thanks, Eva, and welcome, Gabby.
Thank you, Chema.
Yes, no, same questions. What's your role, company does, and your career to get into your current role?
Sure. So my name is Gabby Dizon, and I'm here in Manila, Philippines. So I am in the kind of blockchain game and NFT space. We have a group called Yield Guild Games, or YGG. So what we do is that we buy NFTs from different games. and then we lend them out to our players so that they can actually play these games and earn an income. So this movement is called Play to Earn, and this has been going on since last year, where you have basically online games that can be played, but the economy of these games is actually tied to the real world because of the blockchain, and because you can earn cryptocurrency via playing these games. And we've been doing this where we work with thousands of players around the world, mostly from developing countries, so that they can actually earn money via playing games, earning tokens from these games, and then selling them back to their local currency. So yeah, and in many cases, the money that they earn from this is actually higher than the minimum wage in their respective countries. Here in my home country, the Philippines, and other countries as well. So my background is really from the kind of computer game development space. I've been doing game development for 18 years now. Started in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space in 2018, when we heard.
And after the NFTs. And yeah, we've been kind of really pushing the space in crypto and games
and NFTs
ever since.
Thanks, Gabby. Very, very impressive, very disruptive as well. So we'll share more about it later. But Tara Reeves, welcome on board. Welcome in this panel. And please, could you share a bit about more?
You're muted, Tara.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for your patience. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm Tara Reeves. I'm an investor. I'm a partner in a VC firm called Omens Ventures. And I feel like my life's come full circle, because I started out my career as an insurance broker at Aon, the big insurance brokerage, and some kind of 15 years ago, and it was forward thinking, but still old fashioned to what we think of as today. And then I co-founded a startup with a couple of friends of mine at business school. It was a peer-to-peer car sharing service called Choro. And it was one of my co-founders' ideas. It was a classmate of mine at HBS, and he had this idea that you should be able to rent out your cars like an Airbnb. And he asked for my help in figuring out how to insure the cars. And that's how I got the startup bug. We kind of won a student competition, then we won another one, and then one of our professors wrote us our first angel check. It was $400,000. I'd never seen that much money. It was unbelievable. And then we're like, oh my God, we've got a business on our hands. And so we kind of went on to raise a number of rounds from VCs, and it's been a successful business. And that's kind of, as I say, what gave me the startup bug. And I turned investor, 6 or 7 years ago, primarily investing in fintech, after a stint at Wonga.com, where I was head of product. So I feel like I'm in a hugely privileged position to kind of have a bird's eye view of trends in this area, which is kind of just endlessly fascinating to me. So super excited to chat more about where the puck is going.
No, that's we're very, very lucky to have you, Tara, because you'll give another perspective as well, and amazing, inspiring journey. Thanks a lot. Sophie Guibault, welcome to the discussion. And, could you, I know Sophie for many, many years, in fintech, but could you share with us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Raman, and hello, everybody. So I think I don't have also the traditional path to reach where I am, but hopefully a generalist path that brought me here today. So I started my career actually in finance as well. I actually started in mergers and acquisitions in New York. Then I moved on to leverage buyout. Then I became an investor like Tara, where I was investing in tech companies at the growth stage. At this point, before 2010, growth stage was basically Series B and Series C between 5 and 15 million. So things have changed quite a lot. After doing that, what I realized is that I actually wanted to be very much operational and not only judge the strategy of the companies and the founders, but I actually wanted to basically implement it by myself. And to do so, I joined Rocket Internet to launch HelloFresh in the UK. 6 months down the line, essentially, e-commerce was definitely super interesting, but I actually wanted something a bit potentially more complex and looping back to my previous role, and it's how I ended up in fintech. It was 10 years ago. And for the past 10 years, I have been essentially riding the wave of neobanks, banking as a service, and now embedded finance, and essentially enabling companies to launch neobanks propositions and embedded finance proposition at Bankable, Fidor, and now OpenPay. And in the middle, I also launched a retail bank in the UK for Fidor. So it's a bit about my background. Currently, I'm the Chief Growth Officer of OpenPay, which is a banking as a service provider. We are on our way to also become a bank in the UK, which is pretty exciting. My role encompasses looking after marketing, as well as essentially new use cases, business development, partnerships, and market deals, as well as some elements of corporate development. And my job definitely didn't exist 15 years ago as it is, and I think it's really the fact of having done so many different things, not for so long, but being probably a generalist, that enables me to do this job today.
Thanks a lot, Sophie, and we're very, very glad to have so many people, today, from totally different background, who have done a lot of things to come to their current role. So I think you will learn a lot. And my first question, and perhaps I'll start with Sophie, before we start about, the industry, how do you personally acquire new skill and upskill yourself? And I'll start with Sophie, and then Tara, Gabby, and Eva.
I think it's an excellent question. In all transparency, I have always taken jobs I had no clue how to do. And I have done that quite repeatedly. Like the biggest time was probably, actually there was two big times. The first time when I joined Rocket Internet as Chief Marketing Officer. So obviously, like you heard, that as part of the beginning of my career, I had no clue about marketing. So it was really scary. I actually started with just buying books and just trying stuff. So that was really the first part. The second part was when I accepted to join Fidor to launch the retail bank in the UK, and I had literally no idea on how to launch a bank, and that was really, really scary as well. So essentially, it's really about accepting that you don't know and just learning on the job. Out to people that know, hiring people that definitely know much more than me, and accept, look constantly, because once you have developed this capacity, again and again.
Tara, what about you? How do you personally acquire new skills and upskill yourself?
So I have a kind of uniquely privileged position, because I end up speaking to, dozens of people a week who are all so much more knowledgeable than I am about their particular area of fintech or whatever startup they're working on. And so I am one of these people who absorbs information in conversation. And so, and I think everyone has their own learning styles. Some people, they learn by kind of reading, and some people learn by actually listening, and some people learn by just kind of doing. And so I, as I say, I'm incredibly lucky, because I tend to remember conversations and absorb what's said, and I love to be able to ask questions of these kind of amazing entrepreneurs who are really the players, and I get to be the coach and write a check and be a sounding board. I think when I think about some of the most successful startups that I've either been involved with or worked at, that there's always been this willingness to hire more qualified people than yourself. And this whole idea of you're too qualified for this job, that's just nonsense, right? And particularly in startups, you can get people who are willing to take huge pay cuts and who just want a different environment. And it seems crazy to me that there's occasionally resistance from people who are like, no, you're too qualified. This isn't a job for you. And I'm like, yes, if somebody wants to do this role and they're very qualified, and let's get them on board. This is amazing. And so I do think that there's a lot of change, and this idea that, you know, your boss is always going to be older than you and that and going to be more experienced, and like that is just not true anymore, particularly in the environment that we're in. And so yeah, to answer your question, as I say, I talk to a lot of smart people, and also I am very, very pro hiring people who are smarter than I am.
Very, very nice. Gabby, what's your secret?
So I work in a very fast-moving space in the blockchain space, where a lot of the things that we're doing now did not even exist maybe 1 or 2 years ago. So it's really kind of the willingness to experiment and really just be a beginner all over again, especially with what I'm doing, which is kind of a combination of different things. So it is gaming, it is cryptocurrency, it's also financial services, and part of it is also future of work. So it actually really combines different things that kind of have never really gotten together before. So you have to be really willing to experiment, try new things, be kind of tolerant for tools maybe that are still very raw because they're very new, and for a lot of your experiments to fail early on. And you know, when something kind of mixes together and works really well, then it's a very, very exciting and gratifying feeling.
Yes, you are so right. You are so right. It's an industry which is test and learn, and you are learning by doing. No, thanks, Gabby. Eva, could you tell us, you know, how do you upskill yourself and learn new skills?
Yeah, I really resonated with what Sophie shared. I feel like my career has been very similar and I'll be starting with consulting, right? Which I think was a great training ground for having to get up to speed really quickly. I remember joining, you know, in the American South, a U.S. railroad company where people, you know, they're all these like old railroaders who've been in the industry for 30 years, and you come in as a 23-year-old who has no full-time work experience, and you have to build trust, and you have to learn, and you have to, you know, sort of prove yourself. And I do think the fact that I don't have a background in technology, startups, or financial services was helpful in some ways. And so, yeah, I think a lot of my career was just spent trying to figure out how to do what needed to be done. And I agree, I think, with some of the things that Sophie had shared around you can hire great people in the early days of a startup. You maybe don't have a ton of budget to hire great people, but I think you in connecting with other people. And I very much learn by doing. So I think it's the same. It's like, okay, I now run products. So what does that look like? Talk to smart product people and put together a product strategy. I think by having to do it, you sort of learn better than it being a purely academic exercise.
No, thanks. We are at CFT seeing a lot of people, especially with this pandemic, you know, has hitting a lot of people losing jobs or really wanting to change, make this new career change. And some of them are from the finance industry, some of them totally new, and they want to join the new world of finance or join a fintech startup. And my question to every one of you is that what would be the best piece of advice, first to a finance professional who is looking to get into fintech? What could be, you know, the piece of advice? Because it's probably, you know, something you see. And what would be the best piece of advice to anyone who is looking to join the new world of new finance today? So who wants to get you to start, you know, very happy for you to jump on this.
I'm happy to start if nobody wants to first. So for me, I think, well, beside of course joining CFT and watching the classes, that's obvious. No, but for me, what I have often told people is essentially to start by doing some mentoring, essentially, like, and offering your expertise to a company that needs it. So essentially focusing on your expertise and offering it to a company to actually learn about the industry, how it works, etc. So, and it's what I essentially have done back in the days, like becoming a mentor while I was at Bankable, and I had never done fintech. Essentially, like I started like basically interacting with specific companies, helping them with fundraising, and it's how like in time, I have learned about the industry, how it works, even how a startup work, because like that's one of the points. So that would be my best piece of advice.
Thanks, Sophie. Anyone wants to share about an advice to people who really wants to change career or get into fintech or
Don't wear a suit to your interview if you're coming from a bank. I say it's a small thing, but important. I'd say that actually financial services is probably the industry where there's the most crossover, right? So this whole attitude of kind of build fast and break things, like that doesn't work in financial services, right? It just doesn't. And you still need like the anti-money laundering stuff and the compliance. And I'm Gabby, even you who are right at the frontier of blockchain, right? I hope you'll agree with me. Like you need all that stuff, and that's not something you can necessarily just learn just by doing. You'll import people in with the right attitude from existing financial services companies. Although I'm fascinated to hear how you guys have done it, because it's hard, right?
Yeah. So in the crypto space, nobody basically has a lot of experience in doing a lot of the things that have been done before. So a lot of the, I would say, traditional financial services have been kind of turned into blockchain. And if you look for someone who is a Solidity developer, for example, there's maybe people only have 2 or 3 years experience, and people are really just things out. So the people from kind of more traditional finance, for example, we find a lot of the skills they have to be unlearned and kind of go back to the kind of what are the core values that we work on, and then use those to kind of apply it to a new medium. So I think it's a very exciting space, and there's much to learn. A lot of the old rules don't apply. A lot of financial services have been turned into software, which I think will be threatening for a lot of people coming from the more traditional finance space. But for people who are willing to learn new skills, go into these communities and learn what are basically the skills needed to get into crypto and blockchain, I think it's very welcoming in that there still aren't a lot of gatekeepers to this new space. As long as you kind of show up actually contributing with your skills somehow, there will be a place for you.
I see Eric is trying to get to the round table, but hopefully he's here. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Sorry about the delay in getting in. You can see my grasp of the technology is breathtaking, isn't it?
Welcome to the discussion. But we'd love to hear more about first, who you are, if you could introduce yourself, and the idea is your current role and what you made to the current role. So what's been your career journey so far, so that people can get to know you a little bit more. But welcome.
Oh, that's very kind and wonderful seeing such familiar names. It's like getting the band back together again, isn't it? And of course, a lot of this is anchored around the Level 39 activity. So I'll start there. I was the creator of Level 39 and ran it for 3 years before Ben then succeeded and continued building it, and now Amy. And I think it became known as probably the most optimized ecosystem for fintech, probably one of the best ecosystems for fintech, and creating super growth and doing deals. It was a wonderful opportunity to actually build that and to help build these help support the growth of super growth companies. And in particular, facing questions like, the talent that they needed and how to solve those challenges was one of the number one things that we focused on. Because, if there's only one thing to get right once you've got the money in the door, it's making sure that you get the right people in with the right skills. Before that, I was, of course, advisor to the UK government, working for Number 10 Downing Street in setting the strategy for the Tech City, now Tech Nation, which got me kind of addicted to the policy environment. And particularly the policy environment around the topic of this panel is incredibly important to get right.
Yes. No, thanks, Eric. And we know Level 39 from the beginning, and I know it's for us, the best ecosystem, that Yeah, people could dream of, level 39 being in London. So very impressive, the work that you have done. We're very pleased to have you here. The
I
question,
have to second that, Traman. I'm so sorry, but I haven't seen Eric for such a long time.
Sophie!
And when I'm saying that I have been doing mentoring and fundraising help for startups as a way to learn fintech, that's at level 39, and that's thanks to Eric. So for me, Eric has been such impactful in our industry.
Oh, you're very kind. But actually, what I would say is the only thing that we didn't do at level 39 was invest. So now Eden Base is like level 39, but with a fund. So please visit. Please look at us. Come and visit. We're excited to meet people again.
excellent. No, it's very good. We will be visiting you, and we'll find out much more. But no, we're very pleased to have you. I was asking everyone about, we are at CFT seeing a lot of people, especially with the COVID-19, with the pandemic, a lot of people are looking for opportunities because, digitalization is coming, finance been totally transformed and acceleration with COVID-19, which means that there are new jobs, there are new type of job being created, and a lot of people are looking for the career change or want to get into fintech or want to get into news opportunity. Those are, what would be, Eric, the best piece of advice, Eva as well, please. What's the best piece of advice would you give to a finance professionals who is looking to get into fintech, or what would be the best piece of advice to anyone who is looking to join the new world of new finance?
There's a little bit of bias in my answer because obviously I'm going to be taught, I would be able to give advice of what I see is just tremendous growth area and also new skills. I think Gabby mentioned Solidity. And I remember 5 years ago saying to some headhunters and say, you should focus on Solidity, blockchain, because this is going to be a huge demand for this area. And right now, it's very interesting, the skills that we need. And the thing that I would say is that, for example, let me give an example of skills that are missing. And it's a real example of today. For the last 4 weeks, I've been advising a new stablecoin project. And we've gone from 0 to something like 100,000 members in 4 weeks. So think about it, 100,000 unique addresses, which have been airdropped a community coin, and now we're engaging with that community. So think about the technology. Firstly, the technology in automating that whole process, ensuring that their people are not cheating, making sure that the right people get it, engaging the community, brings in the growth factor and the social media, demonizing and making it easier to deal with things like private keys and all the complexity of that. So, for example, for me, a big area of growth is improving the UI and UX in everything related to crypto and DeFi.
Yeah.
So that's just one direct and real example. The other huge area which we're actually investing in is companies who have solutions to help many other businesses monitor and manage their ESG credentials. That's a whole new set of skills that don't exist today. But of course, it's crucial going forward. I can't think of an asset manager anywhere in the world, which is, of course, a multi-trillion-dollar industry, that is not going to insist on hiring ESG caliber people right the way through from their business through to their technology. So that's definitely a great area to get involved in.
No, thanks, Eric. Which comes to you're helping me, which comes to the question is that, who were the people you were hiring yesterday and today? What are the profile and the background of the people you are hiring? So what are the skills you think are the most required in your view? So perhaps Eva, you want to join?
Sure, I'm happy to share. I think that, and again, I appreciate Eric is sharing that he's biased. I mean, all of us are going to be biased in our answers based on what we know and our experiences. I would say that for us, product managers, I agree with Eric in terms of UI, UX, product designers, data, I would say not just data scientists and sort of analysts, but data engineers as well. And then everyone knows sort of software developers. But I would say those are still very in-demand jobs. And I think specifically on the product management, product design, those aren't necessarily as technical of a skill set. So for someone looking to transition, that might be an area where they could use some of their previous experiences and translate those into a new kind of career.
Yeah. Thanks, Gabby, Tara, Sophie. What do you think are the top skills you think are the most important today, most required in your view? Tara, I think you...
Look, I think these guys have hit the nail on the head. Huge demand for distributed ledger talent. I also think that there's something really interesting around kind of behavioral psychologists and behavioral economics, and how people just are predictably irrational in ways that we kind of know about from the nudge unit, from other things, but as we think about kind of holistic credit scores, as we think about holistic insurtech underwriting, our definition of data should be wider and should bring in these areas that I think are kind of fascinating, particularly as the relationship between insurtechs and carriers becomes more and more kind of transactional, and actually it's the relationship between insurtechs and the reinsurers that becomes really meaningful as they take on more risk. So how we think about risk, I think, is just so much wider than a credit score today, and I think Eva's probably the best person to tell us more about that, given her role.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Sophie, Gabby, any news?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I would definitely be looking for adaptability and ability to learn on the spot, right? So it's like being keen to learn new stuff, but also being able to do it. And that's probably what I look for the most. I would follow up on what Tara said, because I feel very strongly about it. It's also hiring people that are better than you. So looking for specialists is actually also very good. But you can be also specialist of very new topics, as Gabby is mentioning on NFT, right? So yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks a lot. We actually at CFT conducted a survey, a global survey. It was in December during the Singapore Fintech Festival, but it was, a global survey. We interviewed like thousands of CEOs and leaders, about the skills that were needed for employees to thrive in their organization today. And the things that come up was, and please, tell me if this is exactly what you were looking for, but it was much more about, of course, having the hard knowledge, but it was work with people from diverse backgrounds, understand people, which was something that perhaps, being in the traditional, environment is not something, or you used to work with people that you understand, but now it's working with people from totally diverse background. Be adaptable to change. Communicate effectively in business context, be super customer centric. So we talked about, customer centricity, and this capacity for innovation and creativity. So those are the skills that employees are looking for organization. But the most important skill for employee to thrive in 5 years, we checked and we asked, and tell me if this is something you also think are relevant, is be adaptable to change. We said it, capacity for innovation, data, understand data and analytical skills, knowledge of ways of working, like what are the digital tools, because sometimes you work for a large organization and you haven't changed the way you work, and today people are still very much manual, and what they want is to try to use the tools that are we use in a startup, like all the Trello, Notions is something that perhaps people don't know. And most important, I think our view is understand technology. I think if there was one thing, that was very, very coming back from a lot of people, like understand the use of technology, AI, all the things that are coming up, because the reality is that if you don't invest to learn how to use them, I think you may not be so relevant. But that was things that were always coming up out of the survey. I will ask you, and perhaps you can think before coming back to me, is that what do you think, and I would love to get you to give us, concrete example. What are the top jobs you are seeing being created today and most in demand compared to 5 years ago? And you share it, but the top 5 years in your industry, from VC to, setting up your own startup in the payments to blockchain, and yourself, Eric, what could be, so that it really help people to envision. And when I think that is a responsibility, you are actually setting up your own company, so you are creating jobs, and it's our responsibility to help the next generation understanding them as well. So if you could tell me, each of you 5 top jobs that you are seeing being created.
I'm happy to start. So on my side, I will give you the top 3, if you don't mind. It's chief data officer for sure. Like we have much bigger focus on data than we had before, and everybody really understand like now the need to actually like have this global view of data around customers. And even in the company or how it operates. The second job, honestly, Chief Growth Officer, which is my current title, is something that we see more and more commonly. So I think it's one of the jobs that have appeared recently and that is growing. The last one where I want to actually put in the conversation, because we discussed it 3 days ago, Traman, but what I think is going to happen pretty soon is head of fintech into brands and tech companies, essentially. So really like seeing this move of like only pure fintech company with fintech people into it, but actually fintech going elsewhere, such as we can see at Shopify with Tri Allen, which is now the head of fintech at Shopify. And when you see the revenues that financial services now represent for Shopify or for Grab, you understand that basically there will be a lot of needs for such profile in the future.
Thanks, Sophie. Can you tell us more? What is a chief growth officer? What do you really do?
Oh, that's a good question. So what I do, I cover essentially everything that is related to growth in a company. So this role specifically tend to be present in tech companies, like specifically on growing the number of users in a B2B context and doing quite a lot of analysis, iterations, trying to find really ways to make the customer base grow essentially and spend more and like become more sticky and loyal to the brands. In my context, it's on a B2C and B2B context, and it's really about finding ways to actually find a new growth opportunity for the company. So whether it is by acquisition or by organic growth, that's one of the first parts. Looking at new customer segments. It can be looking at how to do better with the existing customer segments, and also about essentially game-changing partnerships that immediately can add a lot of value to the company.
Super interesting. So that's the Chief Growth Officer at OP with Sophie. Anyone wants to share about, their job they see are being created?
I think there's a share of product managers and product owners, and it's a skill set that I think we just haven't been as good in Europe as sort of devising kind of clear product path and just training and echoing a little bit what Sophie and Eva said. I was a product manager. It's how my first job in a startup, I was kind of given an iPhone app and said, look, we kind of need this on Android. Can you just go and design a spec? And I had to kind of figure it out on the fly. But there's so, Gabby talked about this a little bit as well, about how there's so much kind of usability stuff that comes around these new technologies. Like, well, how do we deal with the fact that like somebody has died and they're on their Bitcoin is on a wallet? Like, right now there's just no solution for that. And how do we deal with just like I've been in there's just I've been an investor in a really fabulous startup that's cracked some incredibly hard technical issues. But, you know, in terms of kind of signaling where people's money is or how password recovery works, like that stuff is just should be table stakes. And that's how people interact with your product. And it's so important. So I'm kind of flying the flag here for more UX, for more product, for more design. And financial services and Fintech should be as beautiful and as easy to use as any kind of other consumer app.
Thanks, Tara. Gabby, Eva, or Eric, of course.
Sure.
Eric.
So one thing I'd like to add is that the community manager in the crypto space is actually a lot more important than ever. So I mean, a lot of tech companies have had community managers, and definitely within games, but the community managers have historically been kind of entry-level job, bottom of the totem pole, and then people kind of use it as an entry-level job to get to something else within the organization. And yeah, that's kind of flipped in crypto, where the strength of any cryptocurrency or any like NFT is really around the strength of its glue that holds these together is the community manager that kind of upholds the vision of maybe the community or its founders, and then communicates that among the people who are inside the community and make sure that people are moving in the same direction. These are just so much more, especially now in crypto, where it is like the fusion of commerce and community. And yeah, so we're just seeing just a lot more kind of thoughtful people in community who are really good at what they do, who are paid very well to do what they do, and they don't have to feel like, you know, I'm stuck at a job that pay maybe not so much money because all I'm doing is a community manager. In our space right now, it is actually absolutely very, very important.
Thanks a lot, Gabby. Thanks a lot. Eva.
Yeah, I think I already mentioned some of the jobs, but maybe one thing that I'll share just for those who are looking to make a transition, and there are lots of jobs, like if fintech companies are companies like any other company. You need accountants, you need payroll managers. So for someone who's looking to make a transition, for sure, there are lots of new and exciting jobs, but there are also, you know, maybe more regular jobs that do exist in other markets. And I agree, Tram, with what you had shared around the maybe softer skills that are required to work at a fintech company. So maybe I'll just like add that as encouragement for someone who's like, look, this all sounds very cool, but maybe crypto isn't for me. There are lots of other, again, maybe more quote unquote normal jobs that we are hiring for, and we are looking for a little bit more of that softer skill set, that excitement about the industry, and you know, the willing to change, willing to work with new tools. There's an element of all of that, even in less specialized jobs.
No, thanks, Eva. And I think I would echo what you know, at CFT, we're an educational platform, and a lot of people come to us. And when you see the background of the people that are coming because they want to enter the world of new finance and fintech, my assumption when we set it up, CFT, was people from finance professional who want to upskill themselves and get into fintech or accelerate their growth and wants to learn more about finance technology. But when you look at the profile of the people entering today our platform, those are the ones who wants to learn, and they come from totally different walks of life, not into finance professionals, but they're entrepreneurs, they're marketers from totally different industry. They are teachers, they are people from totally different background. I just remember some people even from the BBC. I just have one example, and I will get Eric, you know, to share about his views. But he was unemployed and he was in marketing, and he came to us because he saw that AI was something he wanted to learn, and we developed a program called AI in Finance. And after 18 months, having been through, you know, the learning, and then after that connecting with all the people, today he's the growth officer in Singapore of MoneyGram. So someone from marketing BBC coming into getting a job in growth strategic officer for MoneyGram in Singapore, and he was in London. So those, it's very encouraging. It means that you today don't have to necessarily coming from a traditional background in finance technology, but coming from totally different background, coming into fintech, which is very encouraging because we are seeing the face of finance being changed. And that's something I wanted to share. So as you say, there are lots and lots of very new jobs that are being created, but also, you know, as you run a company and you build up jobs, already the traditional ones are also exist also. It means that, you know, accounting and anyone that has a background of solid background can join fintech or the new world of finance. Eric, what's your view? What are, you mentioned it already, but is there anything you perhaps want to share?
Sure, I won't do 5, but I'll do 3 because it seems to be the number. Firstly, I'd echo what Gabby said about the community managers, but think just a little bit about the community managers, right? We just had to stand up a team of 6 community managers for an incredibly fast growing project that was literally having, you know, about 120,000 people register a day. But think about the type of community manager, right? They have to be able to carry your vision and ethics and views of the entire business, but yet they have to have the mental maturity of like a seasoned politician to publicly handle and manage the messaging around this. It's a really interesting mix that needs to, that really is evidenced in actually relatively young people who are quite woke, actually. They've got to be quite, to use that word, woke, but then able to evangelize and create passion and keep people loyal. It's a really interesting mix of skills that I think that I'd love to see CFTE actually running some courses on this, because it was hard for us to stand up these community managers. I'd echo that one, Gabby. You are spot on that one. So crucial. The other one to talk about is we are still having trouble finding really specialized AI and machine learning experts who can look at a traditional business or a real world set of data and advise what is the best AI or machine learning to use, rather than the one that the current, that somebody's pushing at them. You know, should they be using a neural net? Should they using NLP? There's different way, especially now that AI is becoming general purpose. And so actually you can use AI for an awful lot of things. So that's having those specialization. We actually bring them into the hub ourselves and we share them with our teams so that they make the right technology decision. Quite an interesting role that we're just learning about, so important. There is the ethical custodianship of the impact of your AI. If you think about that, by 2030, 30% of the world's jobs will be gone in theory. What does that mean? And so when we invest in a company, we want to see that the founders have a view of their impact, because kind of what we're doing, we're investing into productivity efficiencies driven by the technology. We want to see that these founders have a view, or at least an understanding of the impact, and so they can actually deploy their technology in an ethical, sustainable way. But the big one for the future that I guess I'll leave you with is we've just started to do some work in bringing quantum advantage to various products, and finance is amazing. Now, it is really interesting. You know, it's just on the cusp of where quantum methods, not quantum power, because there aren't enough qubits yet, but quantum methods are available for things like risk decisions, right? Whereas before in risk, we would feed the machine with a lot of data and get a risk decision based on what we programmed. What quantum methods give you is multiple answers that massively improve your probability. It's called probabilistic determination. It majorly improve your probability of getting the right answer. And that applies across things like drug discovery and getting more drug candidates. But in finance, it's crucial. And so I think that looking at quantum methods, as opposed to, you can't quite get quantum advantage yet, unless you're a Honeywell or a big company like that. But quantum methods, as applied to financial services, are definitely one of the future areas that I'd love to see more people working on. And we're certainly going to be running some programs here to cross-train regular standard developers so that they can actually give the applications they work on quantum advantage.
Thanks a lot, Eric. It was extremely insightful. No, thanks a lot, everyone. We only have a few minutes left, and I think what I would love to get from all of you is what would be your tip you would give to the audience if they were looking for a job? One tip they must do to get into a new job today. And perhaps I will start by with Eva, if you can give your advice before we end.
This is so hard when there's only one tip. Let me see. Do you know what? I think maybe what I'll do is I will share a tip that I think it comes from what you had shared earlier around how do you transition from being in a communications role at the BBC or marketing role, I can't remember what it was, into this other role. And I do think that you have to sell your background, your unique skill set, for how you're going to help that organization solve a problem that's important to them. Because that organization's job is not to hire you. That organization's job is to find the best people who are going to solve the problems and challenges that that organization has. So I think that is the tip I would give, is understand what problems or opportunities that company has and position your skill set as being the best to help solve that. Do that work for them.
Thanks, Eva. Gabi.
Okay, so my one tip would be to give value first. So people are thinking, how this industry, what course do I have to take to get hired? And what I always tell people is find the place where you can
show value. Don't wait to ask permission. Don't wait until there's
kind of a course that you can take. Yeah, just find a way to give value, and people will notice you, and you might get dragged along to the next project, and the next someone will start paying you
incredibly well
in the crypto space, where anyone can show up and basically start into a community.
Thanks, Gabi. Eric, what would be your one tip for anyone looking for a job today?
Get a mobile phone that doesn't heat up too much when you use Hop-in and keeps booting you out. So that's the first tip. But second tip would be probably to, think carefully if you're entering a startup about the stage of startup that you target. So actually look at information that people are offering jobs about their funding rounds, see who's investing in them, because you can rely a little bit on the due diligence of some of the investors that are into it. Because then there's a future prospects. Don't go for ones necessarily that have got too high valuation, because when you get into the share options pool, you want to get in at the lower values. That's probably some advice that's not really shared that much, but it can make a huge difference as you come into a company. But then the other thing that the advice I do is show whoever you're talking to that you love their topic, right? You've looked to the GitHub, you checked everything, all the code. If you're on the development side, if you're on the business side, at least look at the APIs, look who's using the APIs, look at Reddit, what people are saying about them, set up little experiments that you can show using the APIs to the people in the interview. Here's something I just put together over the weekend, just using our API. It was interesting. I learned this. That shows a real passion for what you're doing. And I love it when I see that, when I'm surprised by a candidate that I'm interviewing. I love it when I see something that surprises and delights me, and it shows me depth of understanding and passion. So be passionate and care about what you're doing.
Thanks a lot, Eric. It was extremely insightful. Thanks a lot, for all, your great advice. I think we've learned a lot. We asked a question about the new roles that did not exist a couple of years ago and are emerging today. I can name a few that are Chief Growth Officer, Sophie, Chief Fintech Officer, Chief Data Officer, Compliance Digital Officer, a Community Manager, Product Manager, in UX design. We hear also specialist AI in machine learning, people, roles about ethics, roles about quantum computing. Those roles did not exist a couple of years ago, and now they are emerging. There will be more and more roles, and it's as founders, as leaders, to keep a look at all those jobs, just for the people that need to understand what are those jobs, but also for the next generation coming into the workforce that need those role model to get, you know, into the workforce. So I now leave the floor back, but I just wanted to say thank you, you know, to Eva, to Gabby, to Eric, Sophie, Tara, you know, for joining and sharing your insight. I hope to see you in London. So if you do come, you know, come and visit us. And thanks everyone for joining, and have a very good conference. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tram. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.